in state legislatures across the country. Since 2014, Senator Leahy has led the efforts in the Senate to restore the Voting Rights Act. Due to a conflict with the Appropriations Committee hearing this morning, he may not be able to question witnesses, but he's asked to make opening remarks, and I'm going to extend the same courtesy to Senator Cornyn after Senator Leahy is finished. Senator Leahy.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do appreciate the courtesy. I think it's excellent that you're holding this timely hearing. I think this is the greatest crisis facing our democracy today. I look at my own state of Vermont, where everybody can vote, is encouraged to vote. We do everything possible to vote. We elect a Republican governor and a Democratic lieutenant governor. Every vote counts, and we make sure they do. And people in my state look at what happened in the Georgia legislature. They cannot understand that is happening in the 21st century. You know, the 2020 election should be a great source of pride for our nation. We suffered through a deadly pandemic, but even so, more Americans voted in 2020 than in any modern time in modern history, both Republicans and Democrats. But instead of celebrating that significant achievement, the former president mounted a campaign of misinformation, spreading the big lie that widespread voter fraud led to his defeat. And his disinformation campaign led directly to the violent assault on the nation's capital that took the lives of 5 Americans. I was proud when the Republicans and Democrats in Congress stood bravely together amid the broken glass in ransacked offices to reject the former president's big lie. I was proud that we crossed party lines to certify one of the most secure elections in our history. And when Republicans and Democrats came together again days later for the inauguration of President Biden, America sent a powerful message to the world. Neither a deadly pandemic nor a violent insurrection can defeat our American system of self-government. Now, that was just 90 days ago. But instead of capitalizing on measures that resulted in the highest voter turnout in over a century, dozens of states have moved forward to restrict access to the ballot. As of March, more than 360 bills have been introduced in state legislatures to make voting harder for Americans. These cynical efforts have been justified on the grounds it should be harder to cheat, which, of course, falsely implies that voter fraud was a widespread problem. Did we not just go through an election where there was virtually no evidence of voter fraud and it was looked at by the courts and that's the conclusion they came to? Did we not just reject a violent attempt to overturn our election based on the utterly false claim that was stolen through fraud? Now, I realize memories may be short, but this wave of voter suppression laws is premised on a little bit more than the big lie with a slapdash paint job. If you rejected the big lie then, you should oppose these efforts today. We should all easily agree that when any voters in any party are disenfranchised, our democracy suffers. Depriving Americans of the foundational right to vote also denies them representation in our democratic republic. It's exactly why the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which helps the federal government prevent voter disenfranchisement, has been bipartisan. Every Congress, from 1965 to 2006, repeatedly reauthorized the Voting Rights Act on a bipartisan basis, including in our body, Mr. Chairman, in 2006, by a vote of 98-0. Now, among those who joined me in voting yes in 2006 were Ranking Members Grassley, Senator Graham, Senator Cornyn. The reason the Voting Rights Act has always been a bipartisan bill is it's pro-democracy, not pro-Republican or pro-Democrat. So I hope there will be increased support for the already bipartisan John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. It just restores the federal government's powers under the Voting Rights Act. Without Section 5 powers, which my dear and close friend John Lewis, a hero to many, called the heart and soul of the Voting Rights Act, no administration of either party has the necessary tools to prevent states from enacting changes making voting more difficult for Americans. And as we watch almost daily states unleash a wave of ill-founded laws that restrict the precious right to vote, not protect it, but restrict it. The oversight role of the federal government envisioned by the 1965 Voting Rights Act is more urgently needed than ever. All of us, Republicans and Democrats, should remember what we saw and how we felt on January 6th. We should all recall casting our votes in the twilight hours of January 7th in our capital, the seat of our government that bore the fresh wounds of a violent attack that sought to deny the American people's will. On that day, we put aside our partisan differences in defense of something much bigger than political party, our democracy itself. In the months ahead, Mr. Chairman, I hope we can answer that same call to defend our sacred right to vote, the right that gives democracy its name. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Leahy. Senator Cornyn.
Thank you, Senator Durbin and Senator Grassley, for holding this important hearing today.